Alright, so this is the bottom of the engine here. I just took my time cleaning this. I want to clean it with a plastic razor blade and some acetone and brake clean. Really worked on the edge here because I'm going to put the flywheel back on and the transmission back in. And then I'll keep working on the rest. I think I got the rest clean enough, but always better to get clean as possible. You can see some oils dripping on the other side over there. Now, this is where the transmission mounts, so you can see the 4 O-rings. The 1, 2, 3, these 3 O-rings are the same, but the O-ring out there, where the oil pump is, has a different O-ring. So, from what I can see here, you have oil gets picked up here. Oh, there's hair. That's not good. Oil gets picked up here, then comes out here, to a nice point here where it can leak internally into the down into the oil pan, into the oil cooler, which just mounts over here. Once it's gone through the oil cooler, it's going to go back through another leak point that you'll never know unless you take the pan off. And then this seems to go back up here to where the oil filter will go into another leak point, gets filtered, and then comes back out into another place it can leak. So this is absolutely a wonderful design so that your oil pressure as time goes on could continue to drop as these O-rings fail. Alright, now for the brake clean, I'm using this one from AutoZone. It's not very expensive. And then this, using this acetone, which I took from my sister. I believe, well, I guess there's a little Walgreens symbol on there, so you can get that at Walgreens. Besides that, I have the new pump, no, not the pump, the new valve body installed there. It's been sitting here since yesterday, so I believe the silicone is now dry enough to go in. Alright, so for the flywheel, I got all new bolts. Now you cannot use, I don't know if you can see that bright number, you cannot reuse the bolts. There's some of the old ones. These are torque to yield bolts. So what's going to happen is that you will have, there's 2 stages, you torque them down, and then you're going to turn it a certain amount of degrees, which I have it written on a paper that I printed, so I guess I didn't write it, but it's on a paper that I have. And these will stretch. Also, they have a new sealer on here, because these bolts go straight inside where the oil is in the back. So if you do end up reusing them, which you really should not, because I compared the new one and the old ones, and these are longer because they've been stretched. They're not longer by very much. But if these, if your flywheel bolts come undone, that can do a lot of damage. So it's definitely a better idea just to replace them. New ones come with a new sealer on here, and also, as I just said, these are torque to yield. Right, there's the back of the flywheel. There's a plate that goes in the back. You can see where the oil leak was here from the rear main seal. But anyway, there is a plate in the back, and there's also a plate in the front. Now there is a little locating pin on there, so I marked it, but there still is a locating pin. Alright, so now I have them all lightly screwed. So there's 2 stages to this. On the Volvo software it says 45 Newton meters in a star pattern, and then plus an additional 65 degrees. And the 65 degrees is what causes these to stretch. Now, in the software, it does say that it only lists the manual transmissions for that torque. I can't find one for this one, but I did ask 2 other people, and they told me it was the same. So, hopefully that is correct. Alright, now what you want to do, I have it on the jack. Now, I would definitely use 2 people to put this on. Because I can lift this transmission, but it's probably better you have someone else. It makes it a lot easier, and you definitely don't want this falling off the jack. I have the strap going around it. Make sure it doesn't damage the connector there. And I also have a block of wood in the back, to try to make this more straight. It's still not straight enough. What I'm probably going to do is add another piece of wood back there so that it's more flat. Now the next thing here is the torque converter. I'm just going to go ahead and put the brand new torque converter in. And this is the part where you need to make sure you put this in right, because if you look in there, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but there's two slots that need to go in to the torque converter. This one, I need to unpack it, but if you look at the old one, you can see there are two slots here, and you need to make sure that those go in. Usually when you push these torque converters in, it'll feel like it's engaged, and it's not. You'll spin it, spend a few seconds on it, it'll go in a little bit more, then it feels like it's in, but it's usually not. You have to spin it around a little bit more until it goes in all the way. Now you need to make sure you do this, otherwise you may not actually realize it when you get it in the car and bolt it up, and the torque converter will completely destroy the transmission oil pump. Alright, there's the brand new torque converter. As far as I can tell from the dealer, this is a brand new torque converter, none of that refurbished stuff. Usually with refurbished stuff you may have a problem with it. I've heard some bad reviews with them where they just last 50,000 miles and then they break. Well, that's not very helpful. So, got a brand new one, and I mean if you're paying someone to do this, you might as well put a new one in. If you are doing it yourself, you may see, well, I could do this again. I think if you actually start taking all this apart, you will say, I don't want to do this again. So knowing that, put a new torque converter. Now we can see the part number here. If you have a V8, it's going to be a 70A020. And if you're doing this on a 3.2, it's going to be 0A100. Now, from what I was told, which could be wrong, the 70A100, which is for the 3.2, has the clutches in there are not as strong as the 70A020. So if you have a 3.2, which usually the 3.2s don't really have torque converter problems, they can. I mean, if you drive them very aggressively all the time, they can. The V8s, if you drive them aggressively, it's not going to last very long, especially if you don't change the fluid. You need to change the fluid on this transmission pretty often. I'm actually going to see if I can add a transmission cooler, which was an option on this car. But this one doesn't have it, but I'm going to see if I can add an additional cooler. And yes, the cooler, there is the cooler that goes through the radiator, but that is not enough, especially not for this enormous car. So anyway, when you push this in, you're going to start pushing it in, spin the torque converter around. It's going to get through, if you looked at the shaft, there's two set of teeth on there. It'll get through the first set of teeth, and it'll feel like it's engaged, but it's not. You got to keep going. And then after it gets through the second state of teeth, it'll also feel like it's engaged, but I assure you it is not. Then you got to keep spinning it until you get it into the oil pump. Now, as you can feel, this torque converter is now hitting the back of this housing. And that is what you want. That means it's fully engaged in there. It needs to be pretty far in, and I also have printed out the bulletin to know how much this torque converter has to be in. So I'll just double check that to make sure and measure it, because this torque converter was so expensive, I don't want it to go to waste. So I just measured it, and it is 13 millimeters in. From this, you just put a ruler here, something flat all along, and then you measure it in. And as long as it's 13 millimeters in, then it's good. Alright, so now I got the transmission in, and all the bolts, well, not all of them are in, except the one for the oil pan, which is sitting right over there, and I am cleaning it up and getting it ready to go back on. Now, one thing I did do, I did put all the torque converter bolts in. I just tightened them. I did not torque them yet. I will torque them once the transmission is fully installed. Alright, so I put some grease to put those O-rings up there. So, this is the transmission over here. You got 1, 2, and 3. Those 3 O-rings are the same, but the last one over there is different. And you can also see I got some grease on the Pan that needs to be cleaned, so I'm going to clean that again and put the pan up. Alright, so to torque the flywheel, I did also use this angle tightening tool. Otherwise, I just torqued all the bell housing bolts, which is 50 Newton meters. Then I'm going to install the engine mount back there bracket in the back. Those bolts also get torqued to 50 Newton meters. I've also tightened the flywheel. That's 60 Newton meters. And now I'm going to put the little plate that lets you access to the torque converter bolts and install the engine mounts. Alright, so now there's the oil cooler. Just replace the two hoses for it. And then you have the new seal here. And this one is for the oil cooler. Not the oil cooler. That one's for the oil cooler. And that one is for the low level oil sensor. Alright, here's the refurbished bevel gear. You just gotta move over all the brackets. Now it's a different one because it's a newer one, so I'm trying to see where the shield would attach on here, but I don't see any bolt holes for it. The other thing you need, if you have found a newer one, getting a newer one that's refurbished, is you need to change the bracket. Uses a different bracket. All the bolts need to be replaced, and of course you need the coupling. It goes in between the transmission and the bevel gear. And don't forget to fill it with fluid. Alright, so unfortunately I had to hurry up and put the car back together, so I didn't film everything. So after putting in the bevel gear gets torqued to all the bolts that attach onto the transmission get torqued to 75 Newton meters, and then the one on the bracket, from what I understand, get torqued to 50 Newton meters. So that's what I did. Now make sure you use all new bolts on the bevel gear and that all the threads are cleaned. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting trying to torque it and it's not going to torque. So, once you've done that, then I went ahead and put the exhaust manifolds back in. As I said earlier in this video, the front catalytic converters in this car don't work, so I fixed them. And now that they're fixed, the car is a little bit louder, but nothing too annoying. It's actually, I think it's really the muffler that does everything. It mainly just changed the note. And then the secondary cats, I didn't touch those. There's a work, so I hope they're working. I mean, I think they're working because when I start this car now, it doesn't really smell like gas at all, so they must be doing something. And then after doing that, I installed the front IPD sway bar on the subframe before putting the subframe up. And I also replaced the subframe bushings. Put that all together. I put the axles back in before putting back the subframe in because the control arms are on the subframe, so that makes it a lot easier. I also replaced it's actually sitting right over here. Replaced this. This is the coupling or collar, call it something. It's a U-joint that goes in between the steering rack and the steering column. So I replaced that, and it did take a lot of the looseness out of the steering wheel. Now it feels very tight. There's a little bit of looseness in there, and that's from the steering rack. So, I mean, you can barely tell that it's a little loose. So, at some point, though, the steering rack will have to be replaced on this car. Besides that, resealing the upper and lower oil pan went fine, and went ahead and filled this car up with coolant. I forgot a hose clamp, so all the coolant spilled everywhere in the driveway, thankfully not in the garage. And then, so I had to go buy more coolant, put that hose clamp back on, get it all done now. And then after doing that, now the way I fill the coolant on these cars is that I will fill up the coolant, then leave it sit for 5-10 minutes, fill it up again, and just keep doing that until it stops going down. Once it stops going down, then you can start the car and it'll go down again, and just keep filling until it doesn't go down, and then give the engine a few revs rev it up to like 4,000 RPM a couple times, and that will cause it to go down again. After you did that, you can go ahead and shut it off, leave it set a little bit, then top it off one last time, and you shouldn't need to top it off again, but you should definitely check it again before you go for another drive. The transmission, because I replaced the valve body and the torque converter, the old torque converter, sitting right over there. That I needed to dump. Actually, let me just check here. I believe it was 8 quarts of fluid. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 bottles there, and I believe there's another bottle somewhere around here. So I went ahead and counted them. I had to put 8 quarts of transmission fluid in this transmission to fill it. That's obviously overfilled maybe by a quart, but that's fine, because if you know how to level these transmissions, if they're overfilled, as long as you don't drive it like that, just let it warm up to 50-55 degrees Celsius. You gotta use a scan tool for that, and then you can level out the transmission. So that was pretty easy. And then don't forget to fill the oil. Now for the oil, I bought Alright, now for the oil, I put 7 liters of oil of 5W30. There it is, of liquid moly, mostly because of FCP Euro. Engine's running very quiet, and now before, you don't want to just start the car. That is not what you want to do, because there's no oil in the oil cooler, there's no oil anywhere. So, you have to pull the fuel pump fuse. The full fuel pump fuse is right under here, and here you can, I probably don't remember which one it is. It's one of those 3 there at the end, I believe. And because everything is empty, now usually when I change oil on the cars, because I can't pre-fill the oil filters, I will take the fuel pump fuse out, crank the engine over for maybe 20 seconds, so that the oil filter is filled, and then I'll go in and start it. So, in this case, because you emptied everything and I replaced a bunch of stuff in the transmission, I actually cranked it over for 2 minutes. Now, you need to span this out. You can't just crank it for 2 minutes straight on. You will overheat the start if you do that. So, don't do that. And while it's cranking over, you can make sure also that you're not hearing anything strange that would not be good. Now, the engine oil is also halfway up the dipstick with 7 liters, so I have to get a little bit more oil so that I can get it right at the max level. And besides that, we got the front and rear IPD sway bar in, because I replaced all the 22 bushings in the rear. And the 8 mile, I drove this car for 8 miles. The transmission, especially if you don't reset the parameters, which I did not, and I'm wondering if I should, the transmission for the first few miles is not going to shift very well. Because this car, the computer is expecting flaring and shuddering, which is now all gone. So it's going to cause some pretty weird, harsh engagement. It shouldn't slam, nothing that would break anything, but it still won't shift very well. Now, towards the end of the 8 miles of driving this car, all the way up to 50 miles an hour, which just gets it into 6th gear, it now shifts very nicely. Very, very nicely, so it kind of makes me not want to reset the parameters, because the thing is that my Autel, it looks like it can reset the parameters, but the thing is that if you don't, you can actually corrupt the computer when you're resetting things, and that is the last thing I need, to corrupt this computer, and then it has to be towed to Volvo. So I'm going to have this car aligned at Volvo anyway, because it's cheaper to have Volvo align it than it is to take it to an aligned shop. If you're doing a repair on your car, you should always maybe check the price at the dealer before you go somewhere else. Because a lot of the times, especially where the town I'm in, for some reason, it is cheaper to take your Volvo in to the dealer than it is to take it to a shop. Now, the BMW sitting over there, that one's different. The dealer is ridiculously expensive. I think it depends who owns the dealership and how much they're going to mark everything up to do some extra damage to your bank account. But besides that, we are now under the car, and we can see here Wow, the camera does not focus very well. It's too bright from over there. Anyway, we can see that there is no leaks. This car is now leak-free, where it actually used to be undrivable with the rear main seal leak. So, that's very good. Right now, I have this front panel apart, and the reason for that is that after I topped everything up, make sure it was running right, I took it around the block, I just partially closed the hood, drove it around, was fine, came back home, checked all the fluids, shut the hood, took it for its 8-mile drive, and then the hood release cable decided to snap. Very nice of it to do that. It's like the car's, instead of telling me thank you, it's telling me I want more. So, and now I can't close the hood. I have to get another cable, which shouldn't be too bad. I mean, you could still drive the car with the hood partially closed because of the safety latch here. Obviously, you can't take it on the highway with that, but it should be fine. So I should be able to get this car aligned and get that new cable in to put it in. Otherwise, the only other thing I did is I went ahead and cleaned this car. Ooh, very shiny. I coat my cars with, if anybody's curious, with C2 V3. Actually, there's an old bottle sitting right there. Might be able to see it. And what that is, it's in between ceramic coating and wax. It's just in between it. So it claims to last 6 months, and it actually depends. If the car's garaged, it'll last a lot longer than that. But if the car's not garaged, it won't last very long. Now the time it took me to take the transmission out, replace everything that I showed in this video was 2 weeks. Now, could be done much faster because I did this when it was over 100 degrees in the garage and it's really hot outside, which means at 100 degrees you're not going to work very fast, a little slower. So I would say, if you're working on this car, obviously you have to roughly know what you're doing. I've never pulled out a transmission, but I did do a lot of other stuff on the cars over the past 10 years that this did not scare me too much. And now that I've done it, I think it was pretty easy, actually. The only dangerous part is taking the transmission out and making sure you have the engine properly secured. Obviously, you got to make sure you know how to use jack stands, otherwise the car's going to fall, and that's going to be very expensive if it doesn't make you into a pizza. So anyway, saying all that, I would say, this video is for entertainment purposes only, and you should maybe not attempt this, but I did it and saved lots of money, and now this car is hopefully good for a long time before it starts leaking. Here's the quick glimpse of the interior. This car's pretty loaded. We have the navigation, which is becoming useless because all the roads are changing. And then the only thing I think this car is missing is the xenon headlights, because it's just kind of annoying it doesn't have that. But that's the only thing it doesn't have. Oh, and it also doesn't have the rear entertainment package and the towing package, which, as I've mentioned, the towing package would come with the transmission cooler, which I'm planning to add on this car. Now, the next thing is I probably have to drive the car pretty gently to break in the torque converter. I don't know what's the break-in period. It's probably not much driving to get it to break in properly, but you definitely don't want to mash the throttle all the time. But I always drive the cars under 2,000 RPMs, which is very possible with this engine. The 99 T5, that one's pretty possible. Very easy with the BMW, even though the BMW only has a 3-liter. And then we just got a little Subaru sitting over there. That one is impossible to drive under like 4,000 RPM because it's extremely slow. But otherwise, I would just make sure, drive the car. Once you hit 100 miles, maybe go around here, or every so often, check and make sure all the bolts are not coming loose, because that's the last thing you want. Now, the subframe bolts get torqued to 77 foot-pounds plus 120 degrees. Make sure the threads are clean, because if they're not clean, you're going to strip something. You need to use new bolts. You cannot use the old, well, I mean, I guess you can use the old bolts, but considering those, they're torque to yield, so they stretch. And once they're stretched, they can fail, and since they're holding up the entire engine and transmission, it's probably not something you want to reuse. Also, the axle bolts on these cars are also torque to yield. So once you've torqued them, you can't reuse them again. Now, you can reuse them once, but after that, I would replace them because they can snap, and when they snap, well, it's really annoying. You have to clean it out to get it out. The other things I've replaced on this car, well, which was not anticipated here, were the springs. The front springs were really rusty up at the top. They're about $60 each, so I replaced them. And then the front brakes were conveniently worn out. They only have 35,000 miles on them, so that's actually they have less, like 30,000 miles on them. So I have not been the one particularly driving this car very often, but I know who has, and definitely a BMW driver. So I'm not surprised that those brakes are worn out. Interestingly enough, though, the rear brakes are not even halfway used yet. Now for the front brakes, I put some ceramic pads because the brake dust was driving me crazy. I had to clean this wheel like every week. So hopefully these new brake pads will solve that issue. And besides that, the car is done. So hopefully this video was helpful. And also don't forget that there are a bunch of bolts, or small bolts, 8mm bolts all over the place. Don't forget to tighten your... Actually, I thought this was a transmission cooler, but it seems to be a power steering cooler. And this is sitting way too low because I had to loosen it to get my hand up there to open the hood. And then there's a little... Now, if you're wondering what O2 relocation extenders I used, I could maybe tell you. But the ones I used barely fit. They barely fit at all. They're extremely tight. They're not touching anything, but because of the relocation, the O2 wires, need to be moved a little bit. And you need to replace all the zip ties. All the O2 sensor wires are zip tied. So, not really an issue to relocate them. It's perfectly fine. And now finally, this new transmission mount, which is a year old, is not being dumped on with oil, which oil actually damages the bushings. Any rubber bushings that get oil on them will eventually fail prematurely because they're not supposed to get oil on them. So anyway, otherwise nothing else is leaking. So this car is now complete. Well, it's not complete because the hood latch release cable broke, but there's always something that breaks. Now here's a start with no resonator and the fixed the fixed primary Catalytic converters, secondary cats perfectly fine, and stock muffler. Turn the AC off because that's gonna make some noise.